Life is full of challenges, and often it's our hardest moments that shape us the most. Today, we're diving into a powerful story about how adversity can be the catalyst for incredible growth. In this video, we'll explore how Daniel, a man who lost everything, rebuilt his life through resilience, determination, and self-reflection. Join us on this journey of transformation and discover how you too can turn setbacks into stepping stones towards success.
Growth through adversity, a journey of transformation. Chapter 1, the dream and the downfall. Daniel had built his life on a foundation of ambition, dedication, and the unwavering belief that if he worked hard enough, life would reward him. He had risen through the ranks of his company, starting as a junior manager and working his way up to a high-level executive. His wife, Sarah, had always supported him, even when work pulled him away from family time. Together, they built a life that many envied, a comfortable home, 2 children, and what seemed to be an unshakable future. But life, as Daniel would soon learn, has a way of throwing unexpected challenges when you least expect them. The financial collapse came like a storm. One day, his company was announcing record profits. The next, there were whispers of bankruptcy. Rumors spread like wildfire through the office, and Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. He had always been a problem solver, but this felt different, out of his control. When the company officially filed for bankruptcy, the fallout was swift and brutal. Daniel was laid off along with hundreds of others. After over a decade of loyalty, his position was terminated, and with it, his sense of stability.
Chapter 2, the aftermath. Losing his job was only the beginning. As the months of unemployment dragged on, Daniel's sense of failure deepened. The rejection letters piled up, each one chipping away at his confidence. He had once been a man who others turned to for guidance, but now he couldn't even guide himself. Sarah tried to be supportive, but the strain on their relationship was undeniable. Daniel withdrew emotionally, ashamed of his inability to provide. He had always been the rock of the family, and now that rock was crumbling. Arguments between him and Sarah grew frequent. What started as minor disagreements about finances or household responsibilities soon escalated into deeper conflicts about their future. Daniel, once confident and composed, now found himself angry, frustrated, and lost. The weight of his failure was too much to bear, and it wasn't long before Sarah, heartbroken and exhausted, made the difficult decision to leave. She took their children, Lily and Jack, and moved in with her parents, hoping the distance would give them both space to figure things out. Daniel, now alone in their once bustling home, spiraled into a deep depression. His days became monotonous, job searches, brief interactions with recruiters, and sleepless nights filled with anxiety about the future. His world, once so full of promise, now felt impossibly small.
Chapter 3, Rock Bottom. Months turned into a year. The house was quiet now, too quiet. Daniel avoided the empty rooms that once echoed with his children's laughter, preferring instead to sit in the small office where he had worked late into the nights. The reminders of his past success surrounded him, framed certificates, photos of team-building retreats, and awards for excellence in leadership. They felt like relics from a different life. The bills piled up, and Daniel's savings dwindled. He took on temporary jobs to stay afloat, delivering packages, helping at local warehouses, but each job felt like a reminder of his failure. He could no longer bear to look at himself in the mirror. One particularly bleak afternoon, Daniel found himself sitting in his car, parked by the river where he used to take his kids to play. He stared out at the water, wondering how his life had gone so wrong. He had done everything right, hadn't he? He had followed the rules, worked hard, and provided for his family. So why had everything fallen apart? It was in that moment of despair that Daniel realized something important. His life hadn't ended. It had changed, drastically and painfully, but it hadn't ended. He was still here, breathing, thinking, and capable of making decisions. The realization was a small flicker of hope, but it was enough to shake him from his apathy.
Chapter 4. The decision to rebuild. The next morning, Daniel made a decision. He couldn't change the past, but he could control how he moved forward. He started by establishing a simple routine, something to give his day structure again. Every morning, he woke up at dawn and went for a run. The physical activity helped clear his mind, and as his feet pounded the pavement, he began to feel a sense of purpose returning. Running became his therapy. It was during those early morning runs that Daniel began to reflect on his life, not just on what he had lost, but on what he had learned. He realized that he had spent years measuring his worth by external markers, his job, his salary, his role as a provider. But now, stripped of those markers, he had the opportunity to rebuild his identity on something more substantial: resilience. Daniel started small. He set daily goals for himself, like applying to a certain number of jobs or attending networking events. He reconnected with old colleagues, not out of desperation, but to rebuild relationships. Slowly, the fog of failure began to lift, and with each small victory, his confidence grew. But it wasn't just his professional life that needed rebuilding. Daniel knew that his relationship with Sarah and his children had suffered because of his emotional withdrawal. He reached out to Sarah, not to ask for her return, but to open a dialogue about co-parenting. He wanted to be part of Lily and Jack's lives again, even if it meant doing so from a distance.
Chapter 5. The Entrepreneurial Leap. As Daniel regained his footing, an idea that had once seemed distant and improbable began to take shape: starting his own business. He had always dreamed of becoming an entrepreneur, but had never taken the risk. After all, his corporate job had provided the security he needed. But now, with nothing left to lose, Daniel realized that the biggest risk was doing nothing at all. He began researching the market and identifying areas where his expertise could be of value. With his background in management and consulting, he decided to offer freelance services to small businesses. He started by offering free consultations, hoping to build a client base through word of mouth. The first few months were slow, but Daniel refused to give up. He had learned that failure was part of the process, not the end of it. His persistence paid off. One client led to another, and soon Daniel was working on multiple projects. His business began to grow, not in leaps and bounds, but steadily, like a tree taking root after a storm. Daniel realized that his years in the corporate world had prepared him for this moment. He knew how to manage projects, lead teams, and navigate difficult situations. What he had once seen as failure was now the foundation of his success.
Chapter 6. Reconnecting and Healing. As Daniel's business grew, so did his personal life. He and Sarah had maintained a civil relationship for the sake of their children, but over time, their interactions became more than just cordial. They began talking about their struggles, their growth, and the lessons they had learned from their separation. While their marriage had ended, they were still partners in raising Lily and Jack. Daniel's relationship with his children deepened. He spent weekends with them, not as the stressed and distracted father he had once been, but as a man who had learned to be present in the moment. He took them to the river where he had once felt lost, but now it was a place of peace and reflection. They laughed, played, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt like he was truly living.
Chapter 7. Sharing the Journey. As Daniel's business continued to thrive, he began receiving invitations to speak at events and conferences. People wanted to hear his story, not just about his professional success, but about his personal journey of resilience. Daniel realized that his story had the power to inspire others who were facing their own challenges. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He was a mentor, a guide for those who had lost their way. At these events, Daniel spoke not about how to avoid failure, but about how to embrace it. He shared the lessons he had learned, that adversity is inevitable, that failure is not the end, and that resilience is the key to overcoming life's greatest challenges. His message was simple but powerful. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the moments when life knocks you down and you choose to stand back up.
Conclusion: the power of adversity. Looking back on his journey, Daniel realized that the man he had become was far stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than the man he had once been. The adversity he had faced, the loss of his job, his marriage, and his sense of self, had not broken him. Instead, it had transformed him into a man of resilience, a man who knew how to find strength in the face of hardship. Through his struggles, Daniel had discovered the true meaning of success. It wasn't about wealth or status. It was about growth, connection, and the ability to adapt to life's challenges. And in that realization, Daniel found peace. Daniel's story reminds us that adversity is not the end. It's just the beginning of something new. Life will throw challenges your way, but it's how you rise that defines you. If you found inspiration in this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement today. Remember, your greatest growth often comes from your toughest moments. Keep pushing forward.